we're 8 games into the 2026 UFL season, and we got walk-off game-winning field goals. We got a wide receiver and quarterback duo that's destined for the NFL. And we've got UFL conspiracies? We are breaking it all down and much more. Stay tuned for the UFL Week 3 game breakdowns and best bets. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of the DGen Docs. What is up, folks? How we doing? UFL Week 3. We've made it through 2 weeks, and what a 2 weeks it's been. Apologies at the top for the later show, because we've had a lot of number crunching, a lot of things to look over, and this league puts out stuff last minute. So I apologize for this being out last minute, but I will say this is the most bets I'll be able to give out of the week so far, because we got some props, we got a little bit of action there. So it's a jam-packed episode. So we're going to jump in. Before we do that, I guess I should introduce myself. I am the DGen Doc, riding solo in the offseason. Never really an offseason for football, but, you know, my usual co-host, coming to dad, got to give him some time off. So we're rocking solo on the UFL. So you're getting half of the DGen Docs here. We'll just say the one that maybe cares about football a little bit more. But hey, we'll talk about that when my co-host can defend himself. But look, folks, way this is going to break down, I always like to do a little bit of show structure up top. And like I talked about, so we are going to go, we got some expansion news of what this league is going to try to create in 2028. If it makes it there. You got takeaways, got potentially a little bit of a rant, potentially a little bit of a conspiracy theory, whatever. If you follow me on X, you probably know I'm a little amped up for this episode. We were going to get into that. And then we're going to go power rankings. And then we will do week 3 breakdowns and, of course, best bets. So a little bit of a banter up top and then breaking down every single game on the week, all 4 games, and then giving out what bets I'm on and wrapping up with the best bets segment. So without further ado, let's jump into it. The most breaking news of the week here that came today: Oklahoma City, come on down. Oh, that is right, folks. The Oklahoma City area is getting an expansion team in 2028. Now, you know, hey, you can't just have a 9-team league, right? Especially with this, you're going to have to add another team. A lot of speculation that it might be the Michigan Panthers. I don't think anything has come out for sure, but we do know Oklahoma City will be getting a football team, a UFL franchise there in 2028. Personally, I love this idea because you want to target markets that are sports cities. Oklahoma City, a lot of, you know, they're not a lot to do in Oklahoma City, let me say. You've seen how they've rallied around the Thunder and made that work for them. Obviously, Oklahoma, Texas, that area is huge on high school, college football, but there's not a pro team there. So I really like that. You know, could they be another Louisville? That's responded very well, or another Columbus, right? Just cities that make sense, right? You're not competing with a pro football team, but you know it is a sports city. So I do like this move. Recently, having moved to the Midwest, not always a ton to do. People like their sports around here, and that's my type of people. All right, let's get into the UFL Week 2 takeaways. And this is the part of the show where, you know, look, I typically try to hit what we want to hit, get in, get out, let you want to need to know. But I got to get some things off my chest, man. This UFL 2026, let's start with this. I am a huge supporter of football. I love all forms of football. I want spring football to work. That's why I've been doing this content for years. I've watched the AAF. I watched the XFL, the USFL, the UFL, right? I've been around. I've gone and been media at one of the games. I got credentialed to do one of the games. Wrote an article for UFL website, right? I'm all in on this, but we gotta do it the right way. So last week, first off, you know, look, we'll get to the record recap and things like that, but not a super great week for the YouTube show. Do want to follow me on X because we hit a nice 13 and 5-1. The props kind of came in pretty well, saved the week. But anyway, and as I've said every time, any bet I give out, I have my own money on. I would never tell someone or say, hey, this is what I'm on without actually having a bet slip and some proof behind it. So I don't like losing money. That's part of why I feel I'm a decent gambler, because I hate losing money. So I try to analyze what the hell is going on with this league? I felt like I had a decent handle on it after week 1. Week 2, what is going on? So I started crunching numbers, and, really I was watching the games, and I was like, something's not adding up here. One, the biggest thing was the penalty difference between UFL Week 1 and UFL Week 2. One of the big reasons I was a fan of UFL Week 1 is there was minor ref involvement. I felt like they were keeping their whistle, swallowing their whistle, keeping the flags in the pocket. We want to watch football. We want to watch these players decide the game. I do not want to watch a ref show. I mean, it's great that we get to understand and listen to Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira talk and blah, 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 whatever. But I don't want that to be the focus. I want the players to be the focus. So I was noticing a ton of flags this week. I'm like, what is going on there? So I crunched the math. I'm going to pull up. This is just my notes app, obviously, what I was looking at here. So penalty yardage, or penalties, excuse me. So the first 4 weeks, it was 27 total penalties, 6.75 penalties per game. And if we can see, every game had double-digit penalties in week 2. It literally doubled exactly 13.5, 54 total penalties. So there's a couple things that the UFL has been very, very vocal and adamant about, right? So one of the new owners, Mike Rapoli, he's came in, he's got a lot of energy in the league, a lot of things that even myself, I was like, wow, this seems to be moving in the right direction. But he has been hammering, he wants more scoring, more points, and he wants butts in seats. He wants to increase fan attendance. Those are 2 big things, right? So, how do we get more points? First week only averaged 36.5 points. Let me pull this back up. He even said, Mike Rapoli said, I want more points. I want games in the 30. I want higher scoring points, because he knows that's what he thinks sells tickets, and that's what he thinks gets people's eyes on the games. So what do? Well, you tell the officials, hey, let's get a little bit more involved here, and you literally exactly double the amount of penalties. And what did it result in? Exactly 10 points more per game, or 40 more points overall. As you can kind of see here as the points, we had a 70-point total, 46, 42, and then the low of 28 there. It seems like he got his wish. Now, if we just had more scoring and didn't have double the penalties, maybe I wouldn't be so like, whoa, what's going on here? Because this is a clear, if anyone wants the end of that Houston-Birmingham game, there's a lot of penalties that I didn't feel like needed to be thrown out there, right? Okay, so, well, that's not the only thing I noticed. What's another thing, to get people into the seats, right? If you're going to a game, if you're a fan of a team, you want to ensure that they have a chance to win, right? You don't want to go to a game where, unless you're a diehard and you're loyal and that's a real fan, but especially for newer teams, newer leagues, you want to go to games where it's a good atmosphere because the team's winning, right? Home team wins. That is good for the home fans. Well, we also noticed that throughout 8 games, now I do know it's been a small sample size, but it's been some pretty strong trends. The home teams in the UFL are 6-2 straight up, and 7-1 against the spread. And now we look at, okay, well, maybe they're just a little bit better. Well, I went and looked at the penalties called on each team, and there's a clear discrepancy. There were 50 penalties called on the away team and 31 penalties called on the home team. 21 more penalties over 2 weeks called on the away team. Now, if we look in even a little bit closer and look at some of the games where we've had 2 major upsets so far in the 2 weeks of the UFL, right? 2 biggest upsets. Birmingham lost outright against the Houston Gamblers last week. Birmingham had 9 penalties called on them. Houston, only 4 penalties called on them. Okay, let's look at week 1. DC Defenders were 4.5-point favorites at the St. Louis Battlehawks. St. Louis Battlehawks beat them 16-10. DC had 12 penalties called on them. St. Louis, 1 penalty called on them. So for those 2 games where we had 2 major upsets, dogs of 4 point or more, 21 penalties on the away team, only 5 on the home team. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. I don't like that stuff. I think that a lot of the times sports is random and there's variance, and that's what makes it fun is, in gambling fun, and we don't know what's going to happen. There's no such thing as a lock. I can't guarantee anything, right? But in a league like this, particularly, the NFL, there's 32 owners. Your NCAA college football, you have athletic directors, you have administrations in charge of that sole team, that sole entity, right? Your NFL ownership is probably a better example where the owners are in the front office are responsible for that team. Well, in the UFL, there is one ownership group for the entire league. And they control everything. If we saw the way the rosters were constructed, they got to decide who was going where. The coaches, they got to send Anthony back to Florida. They got to pick these guys out, right? They have so much control in the ownership that in a league like this, if they wanted something like this to happen, they could very easily make it happen. Because outside of the head coaches and the players, there's no owner, there's no GM, there's no level to where they can kind of, hey, that's not fair. How's this going on, right? I feel like we're getting slighted here. That's where there's a little bit of like, man, I hope I'm wrong. Because even still, let's say it wasn't so direct, right? You've got a boss who's writing your checks in Mike Rapoli, and he is slamming on the table more points, home team environments. He's literally said, I want every home team to win, and I want more points. These are things out of his mouth. These are not things that I'm making up. So if I have a boss that is writing my checks, you don't think in the officials' back of their mind that they're going to know that or have that in mind, right? Or we look at a situation like last week where Dallas was playing St. Louis. Pretty good game, but Dallas was in control. They were up by 9 points in field goal range with under 2 minutes to go. They threw a 30-yard Hail Mary into double coverage. Shocker, to get more points and cash the over. This is where I understand you're probably like, I don't know, man. Just saying, this is strong tens. 7-1 against the spread at home. There have been exactly double the amount of penalties from week one, to week 2, resulting in exactly 10 plus points per game. Really hard to think that's a coincidence. We're gonna move on because I don't want this to be a whole thing. I do have another thing that I want to get to on the injury front. It's been frustrating. That I will just piece that apart and I won't attack that in whole. But all that to say, gonna just be observing and I'm gonna take that into a grain of salt because it's gonna take a lot for me to not want to look to the home teams and not want to think that we're gonna want to get some more points, right? And if this happens organically, great. More points, I have no issue with that. I do typically, I'm a defensive guy. I think, I like the trenches. I don't want it to be 7-on-7, right? I want it to be real football. But if it happens organically, great. But when you're exactly doubling the penalties and you are things are so favored to the home teams, and we're talking about home teams and the Houston Gamblers, they haven't had a winning season in their entire franchise. So it's not like I don't know, man. This is just something I would feel like a bad host, a bad person to not look at this stuff and at least tell you. Maybe I'm full of it. Maybe, this is just me grasping at straws after a bad week, whatever. But that's what the numbers are saying. And in a league like this where it's easier to control, just keep the antennas up is all I got to say. But hey, let's get into these breakdowns. We're going to do quick takeaways from each game. And then we'll go over the record recap, power rankings, and things like that. Now we'll be back to a normal show. So apologize. Had to get it out. Had to get that because, honestly, at first I was like, no, there's no way. I'm sure it's just anecdotally, it's what I'm thinking. But I was like, you know what? It's only 4 games. Let me go ahead and crunch the numbers. Let's see what this looks like. Let's see if I have any validation in what I'm feeling. Those are what the numbers showed. So, all right, UFL week number 2. We'll go game by game here, just talking real quick takeaways from what we found. First game of the week, Friday, 3 April, we had the DC Defenders absolutely demolish and crush the Columbus Aviators, which was kind of sad because Columbus, man, they had a really nice showing. I think they had over 14,000 at the game. Now, this was a high-scoring game, but it was not a pretty game. There was a lot of turnovers. There was a lot of undisciplined play on both sides of the ball, especially on the defense. Columbus pass game with 2 quarters of basically garbage time, only 157 pass yards. DC, they got back to doing what they want to do and running the ball, and they ran all over Columbus. Ted Ginn, man, first-year head coach, he's got a lot of work cut out for him. Fans showed out, but unfortunately a team did not show up. DC ran for 230 yards. Columbus did run for 161, but there were 7 turnovers combined in this game. It was a very sloppy game that DC really controlled throughout the whole time. Never really thought that Columbus had a chance. They were just outmatched in every single way. Columbus clearly one of the bottom teams of the league. Moving on to the game on Saturday. That was the Orlando Storm versus the Louisville Kings here. 9-19. This was in Orlando. Orlando starts the season off with back-to-back home victories. Look, in this game, the big thing was, what the hell was Jason Redmond thinking with this 2-quarterback system? We've seen teams try to do this in the past in multiple levels of spring football. It doesn't work. Outside of maybe Skip Holtz and the Stallions, just because they had so much more talent than everybody else, it doesn't work. So, if you didn't watch the game, he brought Chandler Rogers in. Rogers actually looked pretty good. He threw a pick late, but then he tried to bring Bean back in, and it really messed with Bean. Bean was super uncomfortable. They started the game, and it was close, and the game was, I think it was 9-9 at half, or it was I think it was 12-9. I think, Orlando had a little bit of a lead there, but it was back and forth in the first half. Louisville was moving the ball. They just could not convert in the red zone. But once he did the 2-quarterback stuff, Louisville did not score a point in the second half. It just totally messed up the offense. Now, even maybe a bigger deal is Louisville has 0 running game. 0. They have not eclipsed 100 yards combined in the 2 games. It's bad. They're the worst rushing team in the league by far. So them being so one-dimensional, and you're trying to switch quarterbacks, they need an identity on offense, and they need one fast. This was just kind of a coaching edge here with Orlando. And Orlando's wide receiver trio of KJ Hamler, Chris Rowland, Elijah Badger continues to be electric. Very, very good wide receiver corps there. Defensively, these were both pretty matched. It was just about Orlando continue to chip away. They got 2 kind of broken plays they scored on with the wide receivers, a lot of yards after catch there. But Louisville just could not get things going on their offensive side. I feel like in both the games this season, Louisville's defense has played well enough to get the job done, but their offense has just let them down, especially in the red zone, time and time again. All right, moving over to the Sunday game. This was the big shocker. If you watched the game, the officiating was a bit questionable at the end. But 2 seconds left, kicks the game-winning field goal there. Hoyland was the special teams player of the week. He's 5 for 5 on the year with field goals. So maybe our next Brandon Aubrey or Jake Bates to make the NFL. We will see. Look, man, Matt Corral, he just is so consistent. Coming in the year, in his 2 years in the UFL, he had as many touchdowns as interceptions. He did the same in this game with 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It's just every time you think he's going to take another step, he takes a step back. And there's an interception. And these were 2 inexcusable, very bad interceptions. I think were game-losing interceptions there. Just boneheaded mistakes. A.J. McCarron, I've talked about it in the preseason and the offseason. Talked about it last week. There's a big drop-off from Skip Holtz to A.J. McCarron. This, coaching does matter, especially when you don't have that much time and you're trying to, make a team that doesn't have a lot of continuity gel together. So as expected, that's kind of one of the biggest things there. Houston offense was humming, man. 407 yards, 22 points, and a victory. It's probably the best their offense has looked in years. And I thought their O-line really bullied Birmingham's D-line. Birmingham's got their defense, man. They really bend. They are not a solid unit. They are not a dominant unit. They get some good turnovers. They're opportunistic, but straight up on defense, a little bit concerned about what they're going to be moving forward. Birmingham was also inefficient in the run game, and the 2 really bad interceptions. Houston didn't make the boneheaded turnovers that we're used to them making. They did, fumble going in on the first drive, but they kind of cleaned things up, and it was Birmingham that made those mistakes uncharacteristically, and they ultimately lost the game because of it. And then finally, our Tuesday night thriller, Dallas 31, St. Louis 15. The score looks like Dallas kicked their ass, and Dallas kicked their ass in just about every way. It was on Dallas in this one. This one was especially throughout the week, and I was noticing that the home teams were getting such a big favor there. This was a pretty easy one on the side. Now, the hitting the over in the last minute and a half was a little bit, what are we doing, But, hey, it is what it is. But the big thing is Austin Reed to Tyler Vaughns is an absolute UFL cheat code. Tyler Vaughns has 17 catches. He's got over 250 yards. He's got, I think, 4 touchdowns. Reed has 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. This duo is lightning in the bottle. And I don't really see anyone in the league being able to stop them on a consistent basis. So this offense is going to continue to be fun. Brandon Silvers is a big question mark at QB1. He was coming into the season, which is why I wasn't super high on the Battlehawks. And then they had no run game in this one, which I think you cannot put all of this on Brandon Silver's shoulder. I think that's a recipe for disaster, which is kind of what it turned into. So completely dominant in the first half by Dallas. St. Louis made a little bit of a run, but Dallas never really a question of whether they were going to win the game. Dallas, that was about big as a wire to victory as you're going to get in the UFL. So those are kind of the takeaways from UFL Week 2. We'll do a quick little bit of a records recap there. Look, not good size in total. Really other than Dallas game, was not hitting much. And that's when I started understanding, man, these home teams are all covering. So maybe we need to just keep it simple, stupid, and get back to the basics here. And if the league's got an agenda, why not profit off it, right? Now, I will say I am going to give out some props for this one because in the first 2 games, the props are actually out to a certain extent. But let's pull this up here because Friday night kind of helped carry us as far as being able to stay afloat for the week. Gave this out before over on X, hit a 13-1 on Alize Mack anytime touchdown, a 5-1, a plus 210, and then a minus 125 prop. So, just there alone, it was a nice 20 units up on Friday night that helped to kind of save the rest of the week. That was nothing to really write home about, and definitely on the sides in total. So, for those props, also put out a DFS lineup. I put out 2 DFS lineups, 1 per week. They've both cashed and, doubled the money there. So props and DFS, especially right now when they're the better part of kind of the more profitable part of the show, definitely going to want to make sure that you just give me a follow over on X at the DJN Doc. I wish I could just give all the props out right now, but the markets aren't open. And we'll get to why I don't even blame the books because of the lack of consistency from an injury standpoint, as far as the injury reports and the depth charts. But as of right now, it's getting a little bit better, but the props market is not as expansive as it was. And it's a lot is because the injury situation is not being handled well at all. I've kind of hinted at it, so let's just talk about the injury front and what I'm kind of speaking to here. All right, I'll give you 2 examples just to make it less ranty and more like this is what I'm talking about here. So the depth charts this year have just been complete shit, for lack of a better term. I don't know, it's not a hard thing. I mean, one of the weeks in week 1, they literally rolled out a Washington Commanders running back room, so they're clearly getting this from somewhere else and then just editing over top of it, which is fine, but somebody check your damn work. So last week, this Tuesday game here, Day Hunter, running back Day Hunter, he was a pretty electric player last year. He was apparently injured week 1, or inactive at least. He did not play. So he wasn't on the injury report, and he was not on the depth chart. So everyone just assumed, I guess he's going to be inactive again. I mean, if he's not on the depth chart, then he's probably not going to be suited up, right? Well, of course, our logic would be wrong because not only did Day Hunter play, Day Hunter was the leading leading rusher in the entire game. How the hell? Clearly this guy was going to play all week. He was healthy enough to get 10 carries and go for 60 yards. How is he not even on the depth chart? I'm not even complaining if he wasn't RB1 or whatever because he didn't get the most touches, but what the hell are we doing? Why are we finding out when they finally release inactives a couple hours before the game that Day Hunter is actually going to play? Because and of course they had props. DraftKings had props on the other running back, which those numbers are going to be affected if Day Hunter's playing. And then this week, my goodness, the Houston Gamblers quarterback Hunter Deckers, he went down with his shoulder injury in the game. He went to the locker room. He came out in street clothes. He came out in a sling. The way he landed on his shoulder, I didn't do a super in-depth injury analysis. It's my background. I'm a physical therapist of the Army. That's, if you haven't, that's kind of where, if you, I know I don't talk a ton of injuries on the UFL side, but that's kind of where my bread and butter is. I think he probably has a broken clavicle, or at least a separated shoulder. He might probably likely is going to be out for the season. But anyway, he was not practice. So on the Tuesday injury report, first of all, they didn't even have anybody listed, which I'm like, okay, we know Deckers is at least not 100%. So even if he's going to play, he's got to be limited. Didn't have anybody listed. Then they had Tuesday and Wednesday that he did not practice. Well, they released in depth chart. Did the Houston Gamblers. Oh my gosh, this is terrible quality. I do apologize. This is over on X, but I know you can't see it very well. But Hunter Decker's there. They've got 4 quarterbacks listed at this top line here, and it's Hunter Decker's listed as QB1, Nolan Henderson listed as QB2, and then they've got a QB3 and a QB4. Now, Hunter Decker's, like I said, there's a lot of reasons to kind of understand that he was not going to be playing. They also signed a quarterback from the Arena Football League. So all the indications are this guy is not going to play. Yet he's listed as QB1 on the depth chart. What are we doing? And now we're finding out that Nolan Henderson may not even play. So they're potentially on their QB3, but if you just looked at their depth chart, which you typically look at to know what teams are going to field, you would think it's going to be Deckers with Henderson backing him up. So again, it's almost like they're trying to be intentionally deceitful. Like, it's not that hard. You just have to match your injury reports with your depth charts. That's it. This was not a problem for the past 2 years of this league. This is not a difficult task. I understand this may seem harsh because injuries is kind of what I focus on, what I do, but no, this does not take a medical professional. You have a medical team who's going to tell you the practice participation and they'll give the game statuses. You just have to relay that. Like, if a guy is labeled out, probably shouldn't be on the depth chart. I mean, come on, guys. Like that, it's just, and what pisses me off is not only is it annoying as fans, but when we talk about betting in DFS, how the hell can we bet on these games, and have any type of faith in it if we don't know who the hell is going to be out there? And on the sportsbook side, I'm never a fan of the sportsbook, but how can they list player prop lines if they don't know who's going to be out there and playing? I mean, for some way, it can kind of be nice to take advantage of, I guess, because books like Bet365 are still listing some stuff, at least in the touchdown prop, but it's just kind of a joke. Like, it's really frustrating because it's not that hard. I believe anyone listening could be competent enough to compile data. That's all it is, right? You're taking these injury reports, you're taking these game statuses and making sure they're reflected accurately on the depth chart. So again, I apologize for so many rants this episode. We're going to get to rankings and no more this episode, but man, I want this league to work. Clearly, I'm here, yelling into a microphone about it, but we got to do the fundamentals. Got to do the fundamentals. Stop all this halftime performer shit where you're wasting money trying to get people like that. Just do the fundamentals, and the football will take care of the rest. All right. Let's get to power rankings. Man, this is not. I knew that it was going to be a little bit charged up on this episode, but I did not want to be 27 minutes in and just get into power rankings. So I will do my best to speed it up a little bit. I do apologize for being fired up there. Okay, so this were the week 2 power rankings, and then let me go ahead and pull up the week 3 power rankings and see how that has adjusted so far. I actually have to bring in the week 3 power rankings first. That'll be helpful. All right, so that was week 2, where we had Dallas on top, Storm, St. Louis Battlehawks, Birmingham Stallions, Louisville Kings, Columbus Aviators, DC all the way down there, and Houston Gamblers. That was going into week 2. Now to show you where I have the rankings now. In week 3, after this last slate of games, Dallas, no surprise, stays on top. They have by far looked like the best team, complete team. Now they have played at home, and they have played a team in the Gamblers and a team in the Battlehawks that I think they're decent teams. I don't think they're the best teams, but you have to give it to Dallas right now. Product on the field, they are far and away the best team. Then the Orlando Storm. This is a team that gave out a future on them to start the season, and then the number got better and got them at 9-1 last week. They've just won. They've only played at home as well, but they've won the games in front of them. We can make the argument maybe Louisville is not that good. How Columbus didn't look great last week, and what do these wins mean? But they're getting the job done. They have really electric wide receivers. They have a good running back. They have a stable quarterback, and they have a good head coach. So right now, they're my 2. Number 3, DC, they're the biggest mover. They got back to looking like their old selves. You know, clearly they were not ready for that game in St. Louis, whatever it was, the fans or something going on. They had a much, much better performance, much more of what we expected from them last week. 4, give me the Birmingham Stallions there. I still think with I'm not in love with this team, and you know, in the preseason rankings kind of showed that I wasn't as high as many people were. Like for them as co-favorites. I mean, I have a bet for them to miss the playoffs at almost 3-1. Them as co-favorites to win the league, I didn't really agree with, but I do think they have a decent amount of talent. You know, I think Matt Corral can be an okay quarterback. Your wide receivers of Deion Kane, Justin Ross, Jada Mickens. You know, you're getting Daigwood Davis back. Like, that's a solid core. So I'm going to put them at 4 there, but 4, 5, and 6 are a bit interchangeable for me right now. Louisville, I'm probably a little bit higher than I should be here, but I still have faith. I do like some of their proponents. I like their defense, man. They're a solid group. Offense just needs to score. They can move the ball. They just can't score in the red zone. Got to figure something out on the run game. But they have a nice home field environment. St. Louis here at 6. They have a really good home field environment. Obviously, the Brandon Silvers. I can't get behind it on the offense. If you make the QB change to Michael Pratt, you know, I probably put them up at 4. Right? And like I said, 4, 5, and 6 are pretty interchangeable to me right now. Not super grounded there. 7, Columbus Aviators, man, they looked like shit last week. Both, you know, McClendon looked terrible, and then they brought in the backup there in Morton, and he looked worse. And then Houston, I'm not buying it, especially with the Hunter Deckers injury. Nolan Henderson came in and played pretty damn well. Admirable effort, but I don't think he's any good at all. So, yeah, those are the power rankings. And now we are officially closing the door on the rear view, looking at the forward at the dash here, because it is the UFL Week 3 breakdowns and best bets. Yeah, we are finally getting to that section of the show. But again, got to learn from the past in order to make our opinions moving forward, because this league changes on a week-to-week basis. That is for damn sure. All right, first game up on the slate. It is a Friday slate, and okay, so we've got Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, April 10th, in Louisville, Kentucky. We've got the Orlando Storm facing off against the Louisville Kings. Orlando is laying -3 on the road and -115. They're -162 on the money line. Louisville is catching 3 plus 136 home dogs. Over/under sitting at 38.5. These odds are via DraftKings. So just to make things simple, all my kind of game graphics are from DraftKings. But I will always tell you the best price that I'm playing out there, because anybody who has a brain, shop around, right? Get the best price. We don't have any brand loyalty or sponsors here. If we get a sponsor, though, your best believe I'll read off of them. So whoever that wants to be, yeah, hit my line. But this is at Lynn Family Soccer Stadium, and you're just probably thinking, like, I don't know, brother, you might have a typo here. These teams just played last week. Yeah, I wish I was. That's not the case, man. Because not only this week, this is the first week of it, but as we can see is the full schedule here. Yes, the Orlando Storm and Louisville Kings just played last week in Orlando, and, you know, Orlando won 19-9, but now they're playing this week to kick off the week in Louisville. This is a back-to-back home-and-home series. I have never seen this in my life, especially in a football. Maybe, you know, soccer, I've seen some of them do it in tournament style, you know, maybe baseball or something like that. But football, back-to-back, play the same team, just home-and-home series in this next week? What? Someone's got to explain to me, what is the draw here? What are we doing? And I wish I could say this was just a scheduling anomaly. This happens 6 times throughout the season. It happens this week. It'll happen next week when Columbus and Dallas play each other again. Like, it happens 6 times throughout the season. There's only 8 teams. I don't think it should be that hard to have a schedule that makes sense. And meanwhile, you're going to have a team that is playing at home 3 weeks, and you're going to have a team this week that's playing 3 straight road games. I feel like the schedule could be a little bit better. But hey, I said I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be positive the rest of the show. We're going to be positive about the league. We're moving forward. You know, we're going to have some fun. Let's do that. So let's talk about this game. Orlando, Louisville here. A couple of injury situations. Orlando linebacker Devontae Beckett with a knee injury. Looks like he's going to make he's probable. He's going to likely make his season debut. Running back number 2, Elijah Dotson, is out in this game. He was getting some burn from Jayshon Corbin, so now it's really going to be the Corbin show. He was out last week as well. Louisville has cut a couple guys. They signed offensive tackle Chin Okorafor, safety Quindell Johnson, and DN LaRon Stokes. I think Okorafor, he's a 2-year starter at Michigan. He's a solid player. This O-line needs help. I don't mind that signing at all. A wide receiver, Tariq Black, who's their second leading wide receiver, is going to be out with a hamstring in this game. But they are likely getting back Isaiah Winstead, who had 60 yards in the first game, and he had a really nice connection with Jason Bean, made some really nice plays, some big play ability there. So he's coming back from a concussion. So, Louisville just seems like they fired a coach one week. They're bringing people in. They're taking people out. They need to settle down a little bit, but I do like the Okorafor and Winstead coming back, and I think Stokes can be a player and the safety as well, so I kind of like their additions this week. Liabilities, as far as what I'm a little bit concerned, Orlando is still the pass protection, which is their very balanced offense, so they don't get into that, where meanwhile Louisville is not balanced at all. The QB question is the big question. Is it going to be Jason Bean, or is it going to be Chandler Rogers at QB1? Now, the depth chart, I can pull that up. Not that it means a damn thing. Oof. Yeah, you can't see anything anyway. But I haven't posted, so don't worry. Just go over to X, or you can find them. Someone has them out. They're not that hard to find. Or if you really want them and you don't find them on my page, just message me. I'll get them to you. There's like a media portal that they try to keep secret that I have access to. It's pretty easy to get access to. But anyway, who's going to be QB1 for this team? Because they played both last week, and Chandler Rogers looked a lot better and a lot more comfortable. They have Jason Bean listed as QB1 on the depth chart. As we've talked about, that means pretty much nothing with these depth charts, right? So I'm kind of hoping it's Rogers, who's looked a lot better against this Orlando defense. I mean, he was moving the ball up and down the field. Excuse me, he did have that late interception, but they also need to get a running game going. That's the concerns going into the game. Now, how do I see this game playing out? Well, this game is really going to be a big test for my theory of the league wants the home team to win and the league wants more points, because that is going to be my first instinct from now on until proven otherwise, especially if I like that side. Now, this one is one where I'm going to take Louisville plus 3.5 over on Bet365 minus 115. That's the number there. I'm also going to take the over 38.5 in this game. This is the lowest total on the board. Look, I get it. Louisville is last in scoring offense with only 8 points per game. But they are able to move the ball, right? And their pass offense, they're fourth in pass yards. I think this team figures some things out. I think Chandler Rogers plays a lot of the game, whether he starts or he comes in for Bean on a short leash. I think they can figure some things out with Winstead coming back and Lucky Jackson. They have enough playmakers there. I like the home crowd at Louisville, and I think their defense is going to keep them in it. I think their defense is able to. They had an interception against Plummer last week. I think they're able to turn him over a little bit, and I think this game turns into a little bit more of a shootout than we think, right? Again, we know the league would like it, right? We know the league would want that to happen. I do think that the wide receiver trio of Chris Rowland, Elijah Badger, KJ Hamler, they're all super electric and can take it the distance at any moment. So I do think this pops over the total there, because on paper, everyone is it would make sense. Why would you not take the under here? Everything is pointing to the under. Well, we saw that multiple times throughout the last couple weeks, and that has just not been the case. So if the league is going to lean into this, we're going to want more points. We're going to want more points, and I think this can get over 38.5. Louisville plus 3.5, because I'm calling for Chandler Rogers to be one of the main quarterback in this game, whether he starts or takes over, whatever it is. And I think this home crowd there in Louisville will make a difference there. They're going to want a win for them. And Orlando, as much as they're 2-0, and I like the trajectory here, it's not like they were head and shoulders above Louisville last week. Again, they were down about to go into the half, and Plummer made a crazy play, and KJ Hamler came back for a pass on a long third or fourth down and outran the defense. Like, that was a broken play if you go back and look at it. So Louisville was right there. So I'm gonna take 3.5 here. I think people are gonna be running to the window to take Orlando because it just makes sense. But it's the UFL. and we can't think logically in this league. We do have some props because these lines are out, so let me run through some props here. I like on the anytime touchdown market, give me Chris Olin at plus 170 over at Bet365. He had 10 targets last week. He's already got a touchdown in week 1 on the season. You know, he was the cheapest price out of him and Hamler and some of these other guys. I think he's going to be super involved in the offense. Again, 10 targets last week. I like him to find the end zone at plus 170. Also, a couple dart throws over on the Louisville side. Isaiah Winstead, anytime touchdown at 10-1, and Trey McKitty, anytime touchdown at 10-1 as well. Isaiah Winstead had 2 catches for 60 yards, 2 long catches before he got knocked out of the game with a nasty-looking concussion. He is a big wide receiver, not only big plays, but he's a tall dude who can go up and get it. 10-1 for what I think is their wide receiver 2 is just an insane misprice. I understand he's coming back from injury, but it's concussion. Typically from a concussion, especially with the week off, we don't see a production dip historically. Trey McKitty was the leading wide receiver for the Louisville Kings last week with 2 big catches. He's a big tight end, I believe, coming out of Georgia. He's a big target. They need guys that are they can find big targets in the red zone. They got to get in the red zone. At 10-1, I think both these guys are going to be involved in the offense. I think this is a complete misprice, so I love Winstead and McKitty both at 10-1. Over on DraftKings, they got a couple props out that I will dabble into. Lucky Jackson, 50-plus receiving yards at plus 100. He leads the team in receiving yards. He had a really big game week 1 where he went over this number. He had their only touchdown there. So I do think he is their best wide receiver. Last week, they waited way too long to get him involved. I think they pepper him with some targets here. And then Orlando wide receiver Chris Rowland, 75-plus receiving yards at plus 200. Already talked about it. Last week, 10 targets, 8 catches. Didn't quite get to 75 yards, but I think he's able to break a couple tackles there. And there is, Badger had a long run after catch. Hamler had a long run after catch. I think it's Roland's time to get going a little bit in that slot. And then Drayshawn Corbin, 50-plus rush yards at minus 140 and 80-plus rush yards at plus 180. Really, the big thing is here, Orlando is a balanced offense. They are going to run the ball whether they're leading or whether they're down. They're going to get Corbin involved. He's the leading rusher in the UFL from last season. He's a very capable back. He can break one at any time. And his backup in Elijah Dotson, who got a decent amount of carries in week 1, he's out again this week. This is going to be another very heavy Drayshawn Corbin week. So those are all the plays for the first game there, Friday, April 10th. Moving along here to the next game on the slate, we are talking about a game on Saturday, April 11th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. A game that was not played just last week, but we've got the 1-1 Houston Gamblers taking on the 1-1 DC Defenders there. Houston is catching 6.5, and they're plus 240 road underdogs. DC, first game at Audi Field, baby. Hopefully we see the Beer Snake back in action. These are some really energetic fans. Love the DC Defenders fans. Glad they were able to get a championship because the Beer Snake's freaking awesome, man. So it's good that those guys were getting, and gals were able to get rewarded. They're at minus 298 on the money line. Over-under sitting at 47.5. We've got some breaking news here because I was ranting about the injury front, and I told you that Hunter Dekkers wasn't going to play. Obviously doesn't look that smart right now, but this is what I was saying over on Twitter and stuff. This does not make sense. Well, he just got officially ruled out about right before I was about to record. We got the Thursday injury reports that just came out. He's out. That's Hunter Dekkers, the QB1 per the depth chart, is out, and I think the best quarterback on the roster. Nolan Henderson, who's listed as QB2, he came in, was able to lead him to victory last week. He hasn't practiced all week with a finger injury. He's doubtful. So there is a very good chance that we are going to see Tua's little brother, the other Talia Tagovailoa from Maryland. There's a very good chance that he is going to be the starting quarterback in this game. He was signed late going into the season, like just the week of the season was about to start. So he's got a couple weeks under his belt, but still pretty damn new, and does not have a lot of playing time, at least in the UFL. So good luck. He's going to be up against the defending champs here. They should be getting back defensive end Chris Allen. Looks like he's probable there. They did sign quarterback Sam Castronova, who I believe came from the AFL, the Arena Football League. And then guard Avery Jones. Over on the DC side, they did sign wide receiver Javan Antonio. Looks like wide receiver Seth Williams and linebacker Brandon Smith are doubtful and likely out. Remember, left tackle Yasir Durant from last year, an all UFL offensive lineman, is back and should get some playing time this week. All right, looking at where this is going to be here, where I'm going. Give me DC minus the 6.5 over minus 110 over on Bet365. Better number over there. And the under 47.5 over on DraftKings. All right, why am I on DC? Well, one, I don't think Houston, like I understand Houston's coming off a win, which doesn't happen a lot. So did we pour some Gatorade? How are we handling that in the locker room? But the bigger picture is I don't think Houston is really any good. I think Birmingham struggles, there are struggles on defense. But I think Matt Corral just threw two bad interceptions. They got a couple bad calls, kind of got hosed at the end and wound up losing the game, right? Houston, maybe they're not as much of a dumpster fire as we thought as week one, but I still do not trust this offense at all, especially now we are likely, I don't think Nolan Henderson is a good quarterback, but now we're going to go to a guy who is backing him up to his little brother. I don't think that's a recipe for success. I think that that DC has the number one pass defense in the league. They're opportunistic. They've got a couple interceptions there. And I think that DC is going to be able to run on this Houston team. They're going to commit to the run. And I just think they're far more talented. Houston -1 in the turnover category. They tend to give the ball away. So I'm all over DC. DC, first home game. I think this is going to be an incredibly lit environment. And under 47.5, especially with a quarterback 3, I think Houston's going to struggle to put up points. Now, we've got a Houston defense that they're okay against the run. They're the number 2 team in the league against the run. Only 2 games in. I don't want to put too much stake into that because who did you play? How did those games play out? They played a team in Dallas who doesn't really run the ball, and then they played a team in Birmingham that struggles to run the ball. So are they that dominant, or is that more of who they played? But I do think I do think both of these teams, especially we saw last week, when they had success, they committed to the run game. On one side, you've got a QB3. On the other side, you've got Jordan Ta'amu, who was a good player, but this DC offense the way they're built right now, they are a run-first team. So you got 2 teams that are trying to run the ball, and you got a team that has a QB3. So I'm going under 47.5. It's the highest total on the board. Only 2 games would have hit over this number. I just think it's a little bit too rich of a total there. On the props, I've got 3 anytime touchdown plays because even DraftKings hasn't put out any kind of props there. But you got the DC running back number 2. I'm taking you a couple running back number 2s. Xavier Valade at 3-1 over at Bet365. This guy just scored last week. He's the punt returner, he's the kick returner. They like to get him involved as kind of a scat back as for Deion Jackson, and they like to get him involved in the receiving game. He is on the field a lot to be 3-1 against a team where I think DC is going to put up a decent amount of points. And then Houston running back Marcus Yarns at 4-1. I think Houston's going to commit to the run games. Obviously, Jalen White is going to be the leader. But Marcus Yarns had 10 carries, and he averaged double the yards that Jalen White did. And I do think DC, they have allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. And they allowed Columbus and St. Louis to run the ball decently well. So I do think that Houston, if anything, they're going to have, if they want to have success, it's got to be through the ground. So I think Marcus Yarns, it's a nice little dart throw at 4-1. And then DC defense, special teams, anytime touchdown over on DraftKings at plus 350. This was originally all teed up for Nolan Henderson to throw another pick 6, but why not Tua's little brother to throw a pick 6, or Houston to give up a special teams touchdown? Very on brand for this Houston team. I think they get back to their Houston ways, which is not pretty for those fans. So I'm on DC in the under, and a couple backup running backs in DC to get their special teams or defense to get into the end zone there. All right, moving over to Saturday. I like the schedule much better this week. You got a Friday night, Saturday night, and you got a double header on Sunday, the day that football is meant to be played. We were starting off with the early game, Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time in Dallas, Texas. We got the Columbus Aviators and the Dallas Renegades. You got Columbus catching the 7, plus 260 on the money line. Dallas laying the 7 at home. Dallas is on their 3rd straight home game. Don't really know how the schedulers made that happen, but they did. Minus 325 on the money line. Over-under sitting at 46.5. This is at Toyota Stadium in Frisco, Texas. Columbus 0-2, Dallas 2-0. All right. How the hell is this one going to play out? Well, man, this is going to seem chalky, and this is going to seem like I'm just taking every home team because I am. I've got one play on the side and total, no play on the total there because Dallas can put up points with anybody, and I don't trust Columbus, their defense. I don't trust their offense. There's going to be turnovers in this game. You know, is that going to help or hurt the total? Don't want to mess with the total. Just give me Dallas minus 7, minus the 115 at home. Both the games that Dallas has won, they would have covered this number. They win by margin, so I'm not really concerned about them squeaking out a victory. They are clearly the best team, and Columbus may be the worst team. Columbus had to put starting linebacker Story Jackson on the IR this week. Also, Jalen McClendon, despite he's had a full practice these past 2 games, but he banged up his ankle pretty bad on one of the last plays of those games where the backup had to come in. He was struggling to move, and his mobility has been a huge piece of why he's had any success. You know, he had a rushing touchdown last week. He was been able to escape the pocket, but now he's going to be a little less mobile. We saw him fumble the ball multiple times last week. We also saw him he turned it over a decent amount there. So I think he's beat up. The team's beat up. They've got 9 players listed as limited or did not practice as of Wednesday. Dallas, on the mean hand, they only have 1 tackle who was limited this week after not playing, and his backup played very well against the best D-line in the league. So I don't want to overthink this. I think this is Dallas all the way in a runaway spot. They've got the number 1 offense, They've got the number 2 defense. Columbus, they can't stop a sneeze. Columbus is giving up 33.5 points a game, and Dallas is scoring 33.5 points a game. Not a real recipe for thinking that Columbus is going to stop anything. They're also the worst turnover margin at -3 in the league, and Dallas is the best at +3 in the league. I think this is potentially the best team versus the worst team in the league. And unlike the NFL, these teams can be pretty far apart with coaching. You've also got a coach who's been there, very experienced, in Neuheisel for the Dallas Renegades. And you got Ted Ginn Jr. trying to figure things out on the fly with a roster that just is not very good. So I'm all over Dallas here. Prop side, give me running back Jaquandre Wright for the Columbus Aviators because Dallas can let up some garbage time. We saw it to St. Louis. We saw it to Houston. Jaquandre Wright scored last week, and his number was worse. He was plus 210 when we cashed. So, yeah, I'll take him. I don't really know why. I think John Lovett and Tawatua are better running backs, but this Columbus coaching staff seems to really like White and get him involved, especially around the red zone. Again, a bit puzzling to me, but he's got the best price out of him and Tawa, and they're the ones that really get these carries, and he scored just last week. So I like that. Almost 3-1. I think that's just a misprice. And then Dallas running back Ellis Merriweather, anytime touchdown, plus 145. I will say, Day Hunter, I am looking to play his rushing yards if they release a line for it, because Columbus is the worst rush defense. They're giving up 184 yards per game and 6 rushing touchdowns. Now, Day Hunter is the guy who's more explosive, but Ellis Merriweather is the guy who got the most touches, and they give more of the goal line carries to. So at plus 145, I think that's juicy enough for me to go ahead and take a stab at it because I think Dallas is going to score whichever way they want. I think, Tyler Vaughn's is like minus 300 to score, and that might not even be enough of the lopsidedness that he's going to have. But I obviously will not be playing any of that crap. But give me the Ellis Merriweather anytime touchdown. All right, last game on the slate. The second Sunday night game or Sunday afternoon game. This should be a good one. I'm excited about this one. I'll be watching and be excited about all of them, but I do think Houston, DC, and Columbus, Dallas have real big blowout potential written all over them. But I'm curious to see if Louisville's able to show any signs of life, and I'm definitely curious for this one. Both these teams coming off a loss. Both these teams used to be in the cream of the crop of the UFL. Both playoff teams, both rivals that do not like each other. St. Louis, their quarterback, not last year, but the years before, were A.J. McCarron. A.J. McCarron's kind of making his homecoming. I'm sure those fans are going to have something to say there. So We've got 3 p.m. Eastern time, the 1-1 Birmingham Stallions heading up to the Battle Dome to take on the 1-1 St. Louis Battlehawks. Battlehawks catching 2.5 plus 100 and plus 130 on the money line as home dogs. Birmingham laying the 2.5 minus 155. Over understand at 42.5. Wrong team favored. Wrong team favored. Wrong team favored. I especially at home, it's dangerous territory to fade St. Louis at home. On the road, yeah, they're not nearly as good of a team. Whether it's the fans, whether it's feeling just they're sleeping in their bed, whatever it is. But this team at home is just much better, and they have been for the past several years. So it would take a lot for me to want to go ahead and fade them. And this Birmingham team, although they have some talent, man, the coach and the quarterback, I think, are the worst of this stretch of dynasty that they've had. Now, they've had some pretty damn good ones. They've had, I think, the best coach, and they've had some of the best quarterbacks in the league. But I think this is a big drop-off on both levels, and I question if they're going to be able to really be a contender again this year. I think they're a middling, kind of below-average team. And really, I think St. Louis's defense is going to be the difference in this game. Injury-wise, they have starting offensive tackle Armani Taylor Prialu was not practicing as of Wednesday with a concussion. Also, Frank Darby was practicing, but limited, so he sounds like he has a chance to return for St. Louis, but not a ton of injuries, which is great in this one. The way that I'm kind of be playing this, I'm all over St. Louis plus 2.5, plus 100. I'm also on the under 42.5. So a little bit of kind of why I am thinking the way I'm thinking. One, this St. Louis defense, they're the number one defense in terms of yardage, only giving up 240 yards a game. Now they give up, they're more number 5 in scoring because the offense has put them in some bad spots and yada, yada, yada. And a lot of that was last week, and Dallas is going to put points up on just about everybody. But yeah, this Birmingham team, their defense is number 6 in yardage. They're number 6 rush defense, number 7 pass defense. Their scoring defense is a little better because they've been opportunistic with the turnovers. But St. Louis only has turned the ball over 2 times this year, and as much as their offense can struggle, I really think it's going to be a low-scoring, ugly game that St. Louis's defense just makes a couple more plays, whether it's a turnover or just a big 4th down stop or whatever it may be. And Matt Corral, we saw it. He can be loose with the ball. I think St. Louis has an opportunistic defense. I think their D-line is able to get home and create pressure, create sacks, create some turnovers against this Birmingham front. And as much as St. Louis has struggled to get things going on offense, this is a good defense to play. Again, they're giving up over 330 yards a game. Is this Birmingham defense? They are not the unit that they used to be. They're the number 7 pass defense in the league, so maybe it's a get-right spot for Brandon Silvers, who Akeem Butler is back and healthy. They have wide receivers, Ja'Cory Peterson. This offense, they have Jarvian Howard and Latulis out of the backfield. They have dudes on this offense. So whether it's Silvers or whether they pull the plug and pull in Pratt or another guy, they have guys, and A.J. Smith is supposed to be this prodigal child of an offensive coordinator. Well, let's see it. And then at home, they played much better in the week 1, and then at Dallas, and probably the toughest opponent in the league. I'm not going to read too much into that. I think Birmingham's loss to Houston tells me a lot more and speaks volumes there, how they let that game slip away. But I do think this is going to be a tough competitive matchup. So if you're going to give me the home team catching points, absolutely I'm going to take St. Louis there. And I do think this is going to be the lowest scoring game of the week. I think, both these offenses are struggling to score. This is the 6th and 7th scoring offenses going up against each other, and, 4th and 5th scoring defense. I think that St. Louis's defense is going to control the game, and as much as I think St. Louis is going to win, it's not like their offense is lighting things up by any means. So I think that this is an ugly, this game might be in the teens, but I do ultimately think St. Louis pulls it out and gets the W. All right, folks, let's finish up with the best bets and get on out of here for the week. All right. Let's go ahead and pull up our graphic here. So the best bets for week 3, probably could tell by the conviction in my voice giving out these picks, but give me DC minus the 6.5, minus 110 on Bet365. We are taking the defending champions in their first home game, going up against the Houston team, coming off a win, which is not something they do very often, and having to likely start their quarterback number 3. That is just a recipe for disaster. I think DC absolutely blitzes them, and I think this game is over by the first half. Also, St. Louis plus the 2.5, plus 100. Fading the Battlehawks in the Battle Dome. Are you serious? Absolutely not. These fans are going to be jacked up, welcoming back their old quarterback in A.J. McCarron, as he's now the hated rival as the head coach of the Birmingham Stallions. So those are the two best bets. And then the D-Gen play of the week. Give me the two home dogs, Louisville and St. Louis, on the money line, plus 442 over on DraftKings. That is our D-Gen play of the week. So again, I'm on DC, St. Louis at home. So home, and then our two small Yapper home dogs to be a plus 442. All right, folks. Look, I have been yapping enough. But if you made it this far in the episode, one, you're a real one. I appreciate you. And you probably really love football, and you want the UFL to work just like I do. So if you wouldn't mind throwing me a bone here, like, subscribe, especially as a newer channel. We're getting close to that 1,000 mark, right? The bosses can get happy in that sense. And it just shows that you guys, just a small token appreciation for doing this and yapping on the microphone there. But would appreciate any likes and subscribes. Tell a friend, hey, the UFL, it might be rigged, it might not be, but it's fun and it's football, and we can make some money off of it. So really diving into the home team angle and a little bit of, hey, pushing for the points. We'll see if Mike Propoli in the league, how they feel. Maybe they'll see some of my posts and be like, okay, this is how you want to play it. Let's screw you up. But I am not nearly important for that to happen. So, hey, best of luck if you are tailing, and if you're fading, hey, at least hopefully you get some enjoyment out of this and can enjoy some football here as we await the return of college football and the NFL. All right, folks, you know what they say. A lock a day keeps the bookie away. And here at the D-Gen Docs, we've got your prescription. From Doc here on DFSG+. I'm out of here.